trying to escape reality, so they're living in a different reality. And they've made it in their mind and fed upon these seeds, and they're picturing themselves as the knight in shining armor about to save Maiden, whatever her name is, or the vice versa. And they live in this fantasy world that's not real. That's the strongholds, the seeds we planted and given ourselves to. And it begins to produce fruit, and we begin to be held strongly by those thorns, or whatever it would be called, those things that are holding us from walking in reality, in the moment, and where God would have my mind to be.
This is the Discipleship teaching by Drs. Michael and Mary Davis, Part 13.
We've been talking about discipleship and using the parable of the sower which is an amazing parable anyway, but as the basis of talking about discipleship as well as the kingdom of heaven. And we've been identifying different things, defining terms. We talked about what is sowing, who the sower was, that we need to have a kingdom mindset. And this brings us to what is a plant? A plant. Now, a plant that you see somewhere is evidence that a seed has been sown in the past. Now, that may sound like this is pretty dull, of course it is, but there's a reason for that. But that I bring it up, that when you are looking either at behaviors of yourself, behaviors of other people, the things that are going on around you, there have been seeds that have been planted that brought that up. That this sowing and reaping started at the time that God created and began this time on earth, and it was ratified in the Noachic covenant that harvest and the different times of growing would always be on the earth. And a plant, again, as I said, is evidence that a seed has been sown in the past. But I want to just quickly bring up the dictionary definition of it, because it gets very important when we go on further in Matthew 13. And the definition of not a plant, but to plant something is to put or set in the ground for growth. Now, that's good. To put in the ground or set for growth, to establish. But here's the one that's the most important for our purposes, is the word conceal. To conceal. When you plant something, it's concealed. Even when we talk about someone, I don't know, it's a spy. Well, they're a plant. They were planted there but secretly and concealed. And I find it interesting that to plant something, that is actually one of the definitions. Now, with that, I want to turn again to Mark chapter 4, and we'll start reading in verse 22. This is amazing stuff that Jesus is giving us, remembering our definition we just gave. Verse 22, nothing is hidden except to be revealed, nor has anything been secret, but if that would come to light. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. Now, let me just kind of point something out here. All things were created through Christ. He is the Word of God. He holds all things together. And he is making this statement, coming here as the king, coming here to take the kingdom back for his Father. And everything that he says, he is saying because his Father told him to say. And it behooves us to look and listen to what he's saying. nothing is hidden except to be revealed. Nor has anything been secret, but that it would come to light. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. Folks, the things that we often think are hidden, and we discuss this some in the iniquity teaching, because iniquity, by definition, convinces you nobody sees it. But interestingly, and they may not see the iniquity, but they see the evidence of the iniquity. Iniquity is the thing that's always hidden inside us. And if you've not heard that teaching, I encourage you to go and listen to that, because iniquity is different than sin. I don't care what they say, the biblical definition is different than sin. Sin is the outward expression of the inward thought and meditation upon whatever that sin may be. And it's a deeper, a more complicated definition than that, but that's not too far off. The iniquity is hidden, and one of the things about iniquity is it convinces the person to whom it belongs that no one sees this. And the fact is they do see it. It becomes very apparent when you listen to someone in the way they speak, the way they talk, the actions, maybe even the attitudes of speaking and talking. That all of these different things express what is in the person's belief system. And again, what Jesus is saying, whatever is hidden, by definition, has been concealed, and by definition, has been planted. It's been planted. And when it's been planted, what it's going to do is produce fruit. It will grow up, and I need to tell you, just so you'll understand, no farmer ever went out and took that one grain of corn and said, okay, and he put that in there and he covered it up, and he comes back months later, the plant has grown up, and it produces one grain of corn. This is not a very good plant. You began with it, well, we wouldn't expect that to be. Well, you need to understand that what you plant with one seed comes up in great abundance. It's never just one kernel of corn that's going to come up. Again, the concept of concealing or hiding something is going to be very important as we go along in this teaching. What is hidden, planted in our hearts, eventually will become evident. Verse 24. Oh, and I want to say one other thing. Verse 23. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. I used to go, what in the world, Jesus? Why did you say that? Now I go, oh, I get it. I'm sure I don't get it as much as I need to get it, but I'm going to tell you how to get it. There have been times in my life I'd be listening to some teacher, and I wouldn't have the ears to hear what they had to say. A teacher or a counselor, whatever it may be, and they're saying something, and I don't want it to be true. Now, if I don't want it to be true, guess what? I won't have ears to hear it. I'm not going to accept it as truth. My heart, my mind is not open to whatever that may be. And I don't have ears to hear. And Jesus is making that statement, I think, to wake people up, that there are those that don't have ears to hear. And he's wanting them to, but they don't necessarily. So I wanted to say something about that. So let's go on to verse 24, please. And he was saying to them, take care what you listen to. Now let's stop there a second. Take care what you listen to. Right now I'm speaking words. But if you're sitting there listening, your face, but especially with what we're saying right now, is rather flat. It's informational. There's nothing humorous about it. It's difficult to make this too funny. And so there's not an expression anywhere on your face or in any way that anyone knows that you're listening. Now, I bring that up because we hear something and it is planted without us giving, and at the time that it's planted, there's absolutely no evidence that it's been planted. Do you understand what I'm saying? There's no evidence that it's been planted. But it eventually will become known. Take care what you listen to. By your standard of measure, it will be measured to you, and more will be given you besides. Now, how does that connect? Well, what we listen to, and it gets worse if we think about it, but what you actually listen to and receive becomes your standard of measure. If I'm told, well, when you're little, you grow up eventually and you finish up school, you go off to college, you wind up getting married, you have kids, buy a house, grow old and die. And so you set yourself on those lofty goals. If when you hear them enough, you think, oh, those people say these things enough, those things must be satisfying somehow. And it becomes the standard of measure that you measure other people with. If you wind up getting married, you may look at other people and go, that are not married, and go, well, I'm better than you, I'm married. Of course, Paul says it in the other direction. The people that are single are the ones really are open to the Lord. But my point is that when we hear things and hear them enough, and this is one of the reasons our society is in such awful shape right now, because we in the church, and even we within the ecclesia, we in the conservative side of things slept. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. We allowed false philosophies and teachings to bully their ways into the schools and into the courts, into our government. And we were going, I mean, we would do things like, well, we can't do this religious thing here. Why? Separation of church and state. And it's in the Constitution. And of course, it's not in the Constitution. Not the way that it's begun to be defined so much in the last number of decades. And of course, those words are not there either. But we hear it enough, what happens? It becomes our standard of measure, even when we're against it. Oh, well, you can't do anything about that. Separation of church and state, the way it goes. Where did you get that? Why do you believe that? I've heard it over and over again from what? The liberal media. And they say it to you over, well, it must be true. Why? The news said it. The news is not going to lie. Let's talk. Yes, it is. Our society is in the shape it's in right now because with evolutionary teaching, and you wonder how there can be a mass murder at a school done by a school child. 14-year-old, 16-year-old, whatever it may be, 11. Why? They have no hope. They have no hope for their lives. They have been told, you are nothing but a cosmic accident. Everything around you has come into being by accident. DNA, RNA, your body is simply a biological accident after millions and millions of years of evolution. And you are worthless. You're worthless. And whatever you do, it doesn't matter. So what? I kill a bunch of kids. No big deal. There's no such thing in morality anyway. And my life was going to be just junk anyway. And so who cares? We have allowed that to be taught and not the truth of our Lord Jesus Christ, that he somehow, his heavenly Father, believes that you are worthy or you're worthwhile. He alone is worthy, but that you're worth his time and his blood, his life, and he can change you. We instead have bought into very much the philosophy of naturalism, that there's nothing that is actually spiritual around us. And people are starving for truth. And when they're starving for truth, they become desperate, and they kill, and they don't care. They're hopeless. And their standard of measure has been given to them by people that sit up and go, I'm the teacher, you must listen. I'm the media, you must listen. I am a poet that writes rap songs, you must listen. So what? They're talking about killing police officers and rape and murder and all those things, but you must listen. And so hopeless people listening to this stuff do hopeless, hideous, horrible things. Take care of what you listen to. Why? Their standard of measure is not your life. The standard of measure that they have is seeing you dead. And Jesus goes on to say, by your standard of measure it will be measured to you, and more will be given besides. For whoever has, to him more will be given. Whoever does not have, even what he has shall be taken from him. These are pretty frightening statements about life that the Lord of life, the King of life, is making. Now, I want to bring up again this thing from the beginning of time in Genesis. Seeds always produce after their own kind. And whatever I think on, whatever I meditate on, whether it be sin or righteousness, it is what eventually will come out. If I watch, I don't know, enough violent movies, and they are, I don't know, just violent movies, killing and all that kind of stuff. Eventually, it will not become a big deal to me to see somebody, quote unquote, die. I watch enough video games with that, and they're so realistic now that it's not a big deal to see somebody die. It's not real anyway. Life is not real. And eventually it becomes, for these people, not real. And it can do the same for you if you are continuing to plant these seeds. I've not brought this story up in a long time, hadn't thought about it in a long time. We had a young man that was here many years ago, and he was here during the off time, and he would take his bicycle and go down to the library, on weekend. And, okay, you want to go to the library? And we didn't know this, but he was coming back with videos of an old sitcom from back in the 60s. And one that I think 99% of the people would look at and go, okay, no big deal. What was interesting about it is that, again, it was unknown to us that he was doing this, but he started watching those here, and it got to be habit for him, and he got more and more and began to branch out more and more, and in his branching out, he eventually began to really falter in his Christian walk. And we didn't know what was going on. His family couldn't figure out what was happening with him. And finally, he wound up getting kind of desperate because he was in a mess. And he began to confess these things and that this is what he was doing. And of course, he'd gotten into all sorts of things by then. And he completely wiped out in his Christian walk. I think he graduated by that time too. And, already gone on by the time it got really bad. But he had to turn and wound up religiously getting into an extremely conservative group. But he kind of needed it to get away from the things that he was doing. And he had to turn away from that stuff. And he would be one of the first to tell you, these things look like they don't cause any trouble. I'm here to tell you they do. And what was his standard of measure? What gave him short amount of happiness, his own pleasure, hedonism, and eventually the standard of measure got weirder and weirder as he began to watch things that were anything but even close to innocent. They were a long, long ways from that. Again, you see how it is after its kind. The original videos that he was watching still had subtleties of things that would have been of a sensual nature, of a rebellious nature. I don't know if there's any violence in it or whatever, but there were things in there, and that standard of measure and that hunger for that made him go for more, and something that was even beyond what because the first part didn't satisfy. And when the fruit finally came, it was really after the kind of where he started. What did he plant? And it may have been years before, but eventually it came up. We as humans don't believe God's word when he sends his son and he's saying, be careful what you listen to. That's one of the things that I find the most interesting. There's a man who, and who knows, maybe he's out there listening right now, but he is has been a commentator. I don't know if he is or not. Again, we don't have cable, so we get to see cable news about a few minutes a year. And he is a black man, and he's very liberal, very liberal. They've got him on Fox News, and I'll give his name. His name is Juan Williams, and he's a very intelligent fellow. And one of the things, when you hear him saying some of the things he's saying, you're going, why are you saying that? Well, I'll tell you why he's saying it. He says those things because he, as a black man in the United States, has experienced life considerably different than the way I've experienced it. This is not true. I have been in places where I knew I wasn't welcome, and I wasn't welcome because of the color of my skin, okay? But not as often as somebody that is black in this country. And so his experiences and things like that, sort of kind of like his standard of measure. He looks at life through that standard of measure. Now, I bring Juan Williams up not because I'm going to blast him as a liberal, but because he has fallen into a bit of disfavor among some of his peers, because he has had the audacity to write 2 articles and speak openly about what I'm about to say, that the gangsta rap and these different, I don't know what any of that is, but these songs that are, the lyrics are violence against women, violence against police, against family, and glorifying this kind of thing. And he has had the gall, the audacity to say, this is wrong. This is one of the problems that we're having in the black community, is that we are saying, oh, listen, let's all listen to this together and everything will be fine. It's just music. And it's not. And he has made very powerful statements and made a lot of enemies by standing up and telling the absolute truth, that this is hideous, this is terrible. And that is one of let's look over on the white country western side of things. And I've known a lot of cowboys and girls through the years and watched them as they grew up around me, my age and that kind of thing. And people that dated and got married, you think everything is going to be just fine with them. And their marriage falls apart within just a very few years. And why? Well, listen to their music. They may not be rapping it out. I guess if it's cowboys roping it out. But the songs are about drinking in your beer and crying in your beer, and adultery's just fine, and darling, I only love you, but I was with that other woman tonight, but you're the one. Some good lyrics. And you sit around and you think about these things and you begin to romanticize that somehow that's a good thing. Be careful what you listen to. Quote Jesus Christ and Juan Williams. Miss Davis, you have anything you want to say on this? Because
we've dealt with this a lot, with what people have fed their minds on over the years. Females will feed their minds on, even they'll call it Christian novels, but they will have this total, everything's about romance, everything's about getting married, all these things, and it's become such a stronghold in them that is where they've lived in their imagination. And their biggest struggles, they can't be around the opposite sex because that's all they're thinking is, this is that make believe, this is going to happen. Dealt with a lot of people with those kind of strongholds. So it's whatever. I mean, even music, it can be just folk music, it can be rock music, it can be anything. You feed upon it, that artist is taking you somewhere they are. And when they wrote that. And so it's their meditation that you're traveling along, just like with books, novels, romance, chick flicks, all those things take you somewhere that person that put that together wants you to go. And it's their meditation you're following. And so it's just, we've dealt with so many in this area about they just live in this fantasy world because of either movies they've watched or books they've read or music they've listened to, and it's not real. It's strongholds in their mind. So everything's about Mr. Knight in Shining Armor that I pictured in my mind so much that he's going to gallop in any day now. And they live in this fantasy world, or, guys do the same thing, whatever the guys think. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been one yet, but hopefully we'll never be.
Guys don't think that often.
Not
It's okay.
Well, anyway. It's, but that's because we live make believe. And I've said this before. When I was growing up, we had a record, and it said, make believe you're a fireman, or make believe you're a ballerina. And it was all this make believe. And that will often come to mind. That's what you're dealing with people so often, the strongholds that are in their mind because of the seeds they've planted. In trying to escape reality, so they're living in a different reality, and they've made it in their mind and fed upon these seeds, and they're picturing themselves as the knight in shining armor about to save maiden, whatever her name is, or the vice versa. And they live in this fantasy world, and it's not real. And we've dealt with so many people with those kind of strongholds in their life that's all that, they're just in this falsehood. And that's not real. That's the strongholds, the seeds we planted and given ourselves to. And it begins to produce fruit, and we begin to be held strongly by the thorns, or whatever it would be called, those things that are holding us from walking in reality, in the moment, and where God would have my mind to be.
This was produced by Alive Incorporated. For more information and additional resources, please visit www.keytorevival.org. Our mailing address is Alive Incorporated, P.O. Box 747, Burnet, Texas 78611. Our phone number is 512-756-8562. Copyright Alive Incorporated 2018.